Very warm welcome from our side to this, I think you called it webinar, right, Dennis? It's basically a little bit of me talking and introducing some stuff, but then actually we have more than enough time for questions from your side in case, you want to know more about Prisma, you want to know more about what we have in mind in terms of training you as coaches next semester, which is kind of what I want to do today. So as I said, 2 goals. I'm briefly going to introduce Prisma as kind of the overall, initiative. So the big picture perspective, what do we actually talk about when we talk about Prisma? And then the second part is really kind of more concretely talk about our plan. Hello. Talk about our plan and our strategy, how we want to set up this coaching pool that I hope you want to be a part of for next semester, right? My name is Michael. I'm working at ETH as part of Spark Labs. I will later briefly introduce what that is. And I'm also part of the people that support Prisma. And we also have Denise here today. Hey, Denise. She's one of the students that lead the Prisma initiative. I actually have prepared a couple of slides. Again, I try to make it relatively short and compact so that you don't have to listen to me talking for half an hour. Just want to basically give you the most relevant information. And then, as I said, feel free to ask questions and we can have a little discussion if you want. So let's start with Prisma. This is basically our color coding. I'm not sure if you have seen the website yet. This is our logo. So we already put some work into the design part as well, right? To look a little bit credible. Our motto, basically, challenge yourself, adapt to uncertainty, and cooperate with others to manage real-world ambiguity. There's a lot of fancy words in there. So what is Prisma actually? On a, let's say, higher level, we're talking about a teaching innovation initiative, which is also funded by the Innovedum pot of money at ETH, basically. So we're trying to make teaching better at ETH, is the core of what we're doing. Important to know, even though you basically see me talking at the moment, this is a student-driven, student-initiated, and student-led initiative, which is important to remember. So this is not my brainchild, not coming from our side, from Spark Labs, but this is really coming from the student side, and the students have basically identified certain needs, certain gaps in the education at ETH that we want to fill with our initiative. So what does that actually mean? Let's maybe go to the next slide. We have a vision and a mission. So vision of Prisma is about offering a more holistic and multifaceted education to ETH students. It also means putting technical knowledge into context. I will briefly talk about that later, what do we actually mean with that. And then again, kind of the core part is really widening the horizons of students by connecting them across different disciplines. So actually create these interdisciplinary interactions and also kind of bridge the gap to society a little bit and create links there so that students actually have the opportunity to engage with people from other departments, other classes, other courses, other fields, but also interact with society to, in the best case, concretely tackle societal issues. The mission is clear. We want to support students to continuously challenge themselves, to be able to confidently adapt to uncertainty, which is one of the key skills for the future and actually also for today, given what we have seen over the last couple of months, right? And we also want to basically help students to effectively cooperate with others to manage the ambiguous nature of real-world problems. Let me kind of rephrase that in my own words as well. So what we want to do is really develop cross-disciplinary skills that are otherwise a little bit missing at ETH. And I will actually show you a graph about that in a second. I've been a student at ETH not too long ago, and I always felt like, we're very well educated on the kind of technical and sometimes methodological part of what is necessary. But at least for me, certain areas let's talk about, you know, soft skills and different methods, not just from our basically core curriculum, are a little bit missing. So this widening the horizon is really a core part that we want to provide with Prisma. Again, we want to teach competencies that are necessary or essential for the future. And let me actually go to the next slide, because it's really interesting. We did not just invent these competencies we want to foster ourselves, but this is actually based on the so-called ETH competence framework. So ETH also has a lot of people, you know, obviously thinking about the future from a more strategic perspective. And they actually have made the same observation that the students made when they initiated this Prisma initiative, meaning they saw that students at ETH are very well educated on the left part of the circle, basically. So content specific, you know, if we talk about theories and concepts, we're top, obviously. Also for certain, let's say, topic specific methods, we are very good. But the right part of the circle is not very well covered, especially if we talk about bachelor students. So everything that has to do with social skills, be that on an individual personal level or in interacting with others, there's a little bit of a gap that one might want to fill to basically, you know, create future-proof students that actually are able to also go outside of the academic environment and address collaboratively relevant societal issues, right? So again, all about bridging gaps between disciplines and to society. This is, I mean, you can have a look at that on the website, what skills exactly we're talking about. There's actually a lot of different stuff in here. We are focusing on the following key skills for the bachelor students. We also obviously thought about what we can do with master students. This is then more what we want to teach the coaches, so that gets relevant later. One key skill that Prisma wants to promote and foster is diversity sensitivity. So be aware of different perspectives, different opinions, have respect towards other disciplines, to other opinions as well. And in its core, as a skill, basically be able to effectively collaborate with others. Because again, one of the main observations on a strategic level, also from the ETH's perspective, is that in the future, you will very rarely have a case where you only work for yourself or only with people that have the exact same background as you have. But more and more we see that the complexity of the problems we're facing today are actually requiring to put together interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary teams. And this is something that you can learn at the university as well, and not just later, right? Then second key skill, adaptability and flexibility, really straightforward. The world is changing faster and faster. What is true and relevant today might be completely different in 10 or 20 years from now. So it also is very important to be aware of different roles, different contexts, be able to work with ambiguity. In the real world, there is rarely a case where there is kind of one correct solution, but it's often about, you know, trade-offs between different solutions. These are all things that are not usually taught at ETH, especially on a bachelor level. Decision-making, also something that is very important. We're talking about different theories behind decision-making. How do we make decisions under uncertainty with minimization of biases and risks? And again, how to choose among alternatives, because as I said before, usually there's not a one clear best solution or way forward. So we actually have to learn to, you know, weight and evaluate different alternatives and choose the best one to move forward. And then last but not least, cooperation, coordination, teamwork. This is really kind of the soft skill part where we talk about, you know, working together with others, co-producing outputs, giving and taking feedback, sharing responsibility, all very, very important skills that based on our observations, I don't know how you see that, maybe you can add your voice to that later. At least from my perspective, this was clearly missing, at least in my core curriculum, right? And we want to basically provide students the opportunity to develop skills in this area as well. Now, a bit more concretely, how do we do that? We basically have two main approaches of how we want to foster these skills. One is the so-called Prisma course. This actually, we are running that right now. Denise is actually a participant, so we're kind of in the pilot phase, in the prototype for the first iteration of that course. This is, or at least was for this semester, was set up as a semester course where we basically meet twice a week and do project-based learning. So in teams, we basically address a societal issue, and Denise and her peers actually are developing solutions for that problems. This is basically one part of what we're doing. And this is also the more relevant part for you, because here we want to work with coaches as well. And I will go into a bit more detail later. What is also interesting to know, one of the key principles we have at Prisma is that we don't just want to foster these skills kind of in an isolated environment. So obviously we can do, workshops and courses and so on, but you have a bigger effect if you actually include things into existing teaching. So the second part of what we're doing is called the sprinkles, which is basically the idea that we add certain Prisma elements into existing courses, and especially courses that bachelor students take very, very early. So usually in the basis year, right? In the first year, you have a lot of these, chemistry 1, math 1, physics 1 classes that are super, super content heavy. And what we want to do there is not change what is taught, but slightly adapt how the things are taught to make it a bit more interesting, put things a bit more into context, make it a bit more dynamic, and so on. So this is basically another thing that Prisma is doing, not directly related to why you are here today, but also good to know. Let me go back to this Prisma Capstone course. Again, as I said, this is what we basically tried out this semester. So this course has certain goals. What we want to do is basically provide the participants with practice. So this is an applied course. I have inputs from time to time, but it's actually mostly Denise and her friends doing all the work, and I'm just observing more or less, right? So this is really about acquiring practical skills and practice cross-disciplinary competencies, right? We also foster to work and think in a problem-based way. So we really started the semester with a very, very broad challenge sponsored by the city of Zurich. And then the rest of the semester is really kind of project work in a team, trying to figure out what do we make out of this problem and how do we create a meaningful solution. So it's again about putting your own field into a broader context, because we have very multidisciplinary teams, right? We have computer scientists working with biologists and so on. And this is basically where the magic happens, right? It's not only about your discipline anymore, but it's about solving a problem together with everyone bringing their own skills to the table, which is a great thing, I think. And then again, identify challenges that are related to actual relevant societal issues. So not just, creating models and work on hypothetical theoretical things, but actually address concrete problems that different stakeholders outside of ETH are facing today. Structure of this class, again, this is pretty relevant for you, because this is you as coaches potentially would guide people through this kind of structure. We follow the design thinking process. I will later briefly explain what we mean with that. So what we do is called human-centered innovation, where we encourage students to start with going out and speaking to potential users, affected people, experts. So we don't just start with our own knowledge, but we go out and really try to figure out what are the needs and pain points and behaviors of the people we're trying to design a solution for. Also very important, because this usually doesn't happen very often in the beginning of your studies, we are not presenting you the problem exactly in the beginning of the course. So we start with a very broad challenge, but one of the tasks you have as a participant is to actually figure out yourself what is the concrete problem we want to address, which is something you have to get used to. But again, usually what we do in the first 3 years at ETH is working on very well formulated problems that are given to us. Then obviously trying to find concrete solutions. We again encourage our students, and Denise again had to do that as well. We basically want them to go out again, interact with society, test these solutions that are developed to really validate them and not just base them on our own assumptions and our own knowledge and then iterate again and again until we have a nice solution. And by the way, these solutions will be presented next Wednesday. So if you're interested to see what solution Dennis developed this semester, just send us an email and we can send you an invite to the basically final presentation as well. And then last but not least, one of the core part why we're offering this course is to actually, besides promoting all these skills and providing all these skills for the bachelor students, is to give master students the opportunity to acquire skills on their side as well. And the role of the master students in this construct is basically to coach these student teams. We started doing that this semester before we actually had to change the format of the lecture to a fully remote format. So it didn't really make sense to have these coaches anymore. But we are totally convinced that both sides can very much profit from a setup like this, because again, the bachelor students get meaningful input from people that know the methodology, know the course. And on the other hand, we think in coaching innovation teams, you get a lot of interesting essential skills for the future. And maybe that's the last point I want to make about this capstone course, because I said before, what we're trying to do is also kind of bridge the gap to society a little bit. So each semester we actually choose a sustainable development goal to work on to make sure that we're addressing current relevant societal issues. And this year, Denise and her peers were working on Sustainable Development Goal number 11. So the topic was sustainable cities and communities, and we basically built the course around this topic. So the challenges were all somehow within this space, and next semester we will have another sustainable development goal, which basically gives us the content framework we want to move within. This is everything I have to say about Prisma in the broader sense for the moment. Are there any specific questions about the initiative, about what we are doing, about why we are doing what we're doing at this moment, before I go more into detail about the coaching part?
Is next semester, is it going to be about the goal, the 12th goal, which is...
it's not chronologically. We haven't actually decided. Dennis said that before. We probably should do that soon. We haven't decided on which sustainable development goal to address yet. Sometimes that also depends a bit on external partners, because as I said, usually the challenges for our courses are sponsored by someone outside of academia. This year it was the city of Zurich, so it made a lot of sense to actually go with Sustainable Development Goal 11 because it's relevant for the city of Zurich, right? We will probably publish that soon, I assume. We need to have this conversation and decide which topic we want to go with. For you as coaches, this is actually not super relevant. I mean, obviously it's cool if you like the topic as well, but what you're doing is mostly not content related work, right? But you are guiding a team through a process, and the expectation is not that you're very much involved with the content itself.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I think Beth had this on. Beth mentioned in the last call we had that if you're here because you want to work on sustainable, this is probably not the right, let's say,
exactly.
task, because really you have to kind of be as neutral as possible to the solutions, etc. You're here to support kind of the team. So think about it as a context, but not really what you'll be working on specifically. I hope that makes sense.
I also just wanted to mention that the SDG 11 sustainable cities and communities made sense, that students could go interview people on the street and actually talk to them and be involved in the process.
Yeah, true. Any other questions about the kind of the intro part before we go more into the detailed coaching elements? Good. Then let me continue. Again, we have, after I'm done talking, more than enough time to answer all the remaining questions. Good. Then I briefly want to move over to Spark Labs, which is basically another stakeholder that is involved. Ellen and I are or have been working at Spark Labs, the both of us. And what we do is basically provide the methodological framework for what is happening in these classes. yeah, we're part of the TIM chair, so Technology and Innovation Management chair of the MTech department, and we're doing research and teaching into this innovation methodology. And at our core, what we do is basically educate innovation leaders of tomorrow. Just a brief introduction. Again, this is Ellen. Actually, cool that you could join as well, Ellen. Hello. You can introduce yourself if you want. You can also read.
Everybody.
Here.
Yeah, sorry, I'm in Mexico at the moment. I came to visit my family, but glad I can join. So my name is Alan. Actually, my background is in engineering. I was a mechatronics engineer, and my first job was designing control systems for power plants. So how I went from that to this has been a long and windy road. But I've been working at ETH for the last 7 years. I basically founded Spark Labs after my PhD. My PhD was on, let's say, how large firms and startups used innovation approaches like design thinking, for example, to advance their innovations. So I started Spark Labs to try to bring in some of that mindset that I learned at Stanford. And since then, I've started a few different businesses, worked at corporate innovation, but I've always kept my foot in the door at ETH. And we decided to work on, let's say, to support the Prisma initiative, since it was just a PowerPoint a couple of years ago, and continue to do so now. I think this is super cool, and we hope that you guys like it too.
Exactly. And again, I don't have to talk about myself much longer. I was a student until like 2-3 years ago. So I'm kind of very, very close to these needs that were identified. I always felt something was lacking a little bit in my education at ETH. And what I currently do is, on one hand, I'm part of Spark Labs as well. So I'm involved in various teaching activities at ETH, where we actually use the innovation methodologies Ellen just mentioned for various purposes. I'm also an innovation consultant working in the private sector, basically doing the same thing, not with students, but with, old people that don't really want to be innovative, more or less. These are the two sides of what I'm doing. Before we go further, I just briefly wanted to give you an overview of design thinking, because this is the methodology that we base our courses on mostly. This is also relevant for you because, again, you would actually, as coaches, usually coach teams along a process that more or less looks like this. And design thinking, as I said, is a human-centered innovation process where it's all about figuring out what are actual needs of people, actual problems of people, how can we address them, and how can we develop meaningful solutions for them. And this, again, is very similar to the structure for the capstone course I showed you before, because, again, the course is obviously based on this methodology. It's a more or less specific problem solving approach, which differs a little bit from what we are usually used to at ETH. And I just want to point out kind of the main differences. I think the biggest difference is, once again, that you start by going out and finding your own problem. So we're not giving you a problem and you have to solve it like a math problem, but we give you kind of a broader direction to go into, and you actually investigate yourself. You go out, you interact with people, you talk with people, you empathize, you actually try to feel with the people you're designing for, and this leads you to defining a problem yourself, one that you want to address. The other thing is also, you're not doing that alone. We're always working in interdisciplinary teams. So whatever you do, different perspectives, different opinions, and different backgrounds are involved. This is basically the left side of this double diamond graph is the problem space. So we actually spend a lot of time figuring out what is actually the problem we want to solve, which is also a bit counterintuitive compared to how we usually solve problems at ETH. And then the second part is the solution space, where it's all about, ideation, creation of solutions, creative brainstorming, and then once again, kind of bridging the gap to society, going out and actually testing your solutions. So it's not Ellen and myself, for example, telling you that this is a great solution or a not so great solution, but it's really the people you're designing for. So we, again, Denise can tell you how that was. They had to go out with their solutions and actually approach the people that were relevant to that and ask them, what do you think about this solution? Do you use that or not? And this basically then tells you what you have to refine and what you have to make better to really create a meaningful solution that addresses concrete needs of the people we're designing for. This is, again, very, very brief and very superficial. This is just to kind of give you a framework of how we usually work in these different courses. And we actually base more or less all of our activities on that. So when we do a 2-day workshop or when we do a semester-long lecture, it's more or less the same process in its core. Good. Then I also wanted to mention a couple of Spark Labs projects, and this is relevant insofar that most of these initiatives need coaching as well. We do stuff in student education. Some of you probably know ETH Week. This is one of our initiatives where we also in 1 week follow a design thinking process, and that actually also involves coaching. So every team that is part of this initiative or of this activity has a coach that leads them through the week. We offer a specific design thinking class for master students where we might include coaching in the future as well. And then I think also most of you know the Student Project House. Obviously a lot of different things going on there, but more and more also they have a demand for, let's say, properly trained coaches to include in their different activities. Besides that, yeah, sorry.
No, so just something that we want to make clear to all of you guys. This is, let's say, why we're mentioning Spark Labs and all the different activities is because there is a lot of work to be done, and yes, this is actually a highly sought after skill. So it's not just about like, oh, I might find myself a one TA job. This is about developing certain skills that you can use in a broad spectrum of activities throughout ETH. Yes. And as you can see from Michael, myself, and a couple of other people that have gone through our program, actually through your career. So we want you to think about it that way, and you should be interested in this type of work, because otherwise it becomes a little annoying, to say the least. Yeah, exactly. It's intense, it's heavy, but it's also very rewarding if you really like it. So that's why we wanted to kind of show you all these different initiatives.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of them might be cooler for some than others, like the ET Entrepreneurship Club, or doing stuff with at the World Economic Forum. That's super cool for some people. Other people might like more a student, but there's a lot of things to be done.
Yeah, and this is basically only the things that Spark Labs is directly involved with. So there's even more going on a broader perspective throughout ETH. So again, the core message of this slide, I actually can just, this is, by the way, just a couple of impressions how it usually looks like when we go through these types of processes. So, handicraft, people presenting, collaboration, tons of post-its. This is kind of the mood and the process we usually go through in our classes and activities. Of course, this semester it was a little bit different. It was more like what we're doing right now with a couple of faces and black boxes on the screen, but we hope that we can soon go back to this in-person interactive formats again. Exactly. Based on what Ellen just said, I basically now move over to the coaching in a more specific manner. And Ellen already said that.
Any questions so far, by the way?
Oh yeah, maybe about Spark Labs and the process. Yeah. Anyway, feel free to interrupt us at any time, right? If you have very pressing questions, we are flexible, no worries.
Hi. So if I understood correctly, people who are going to be trained in this framework are then we're gonna have also the opportunity to participate in the other things Spark Lab does, the one you showed in the previous slides, or will there be a pool of students who will participate in also the other activities?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. This is basically the strategic goal of what we're doing here, right? We want to create this pool with a somewhat standardized approach so that we actually know what the people that are in this pool are capable to do. And then obviously out of this pool, a lot of initiatives can actually profit, right? So if you are trained in this manner, you have the capability to be a part of ETH Week. You can be part of the Prisma Capstone course. You can be part of these various activities because again, we try to kind of standardize what we teach you in this training so that you are well prepared for all the different activities. Because again, at its core, it's relatively similar what you're doing. Again, it might be for a semester or it might be for 2 days, but you know, the requirements are more or less the same and the necessary skills are more or less the same as well.
And by the way, not just at ETH. There's also, we do a lot of things outside ETH. So
Fair enough.
If you're interested to, just putting it out there.
That's actually a good point. So also for our activities in the private sector, you know, research projects, user research and so on, we actually often hire students from our classes to help us out there as well. So again, this pool is not specifically made for one activity, but really to kind of have together a group of people that is motivated and capable of supporting various stakeholders across ETH and even outside ETH in these types of coaching activities, right? That's the core of what we're trying to do. And again, going back to what Ellen said before, the why behind this, I mean, obviously it's very useful for Spark Labs and for Prisma, but this goes beyond just what we need, because we see across ETH that there is more and more demand for student coaches supporting various different activities across ETH as an institution. There are various project-based lectures in different departments. Environmental science is doing something like that. Material science also starts doing a new course where student coaches are involved. So there are more and more people that are trying out stuff like that. There are extracurricular activities, 2-day workshops from the Entrepreneur Club and so on. And then, as I said before, we have the Student Project House, which is opening basically a huge new space soon, which they have to fill. So a lot of stuff will happen there as well. And all these stakeholders actually need support from people that have the right mindset, the right skills, and the right motivation. And basically, this is what we get out of it, right? But what do you get out of it? As Ellen said before, from our perspective and based on our own experience as well, this is really a great opportunity for you as students to get a lot of different essential, mostly soft skills and methodological skills, and develop leadership capabilities to really help you out, not just within ETH, but that actually is kind of a differentiator if you go out of the academic world after you graduate as well. So again, for example, for myself, that was one of the things that helped me a lot to actually, you know, get a job and develop my career. So this is also, we believe these skills are universally helpful, whatever you're going to do after your graduation. Good. So we have talked about coaching and coaches a lot already. And there are obviously a lot of different definitions what a coach is and what a coach does. I just briefly wanted to summarize from our perspective how we see this role of a coach in this, again, more or less specific situation where you lead a team through a human-centered innovation process. In one sentence, your main task as a coach is to enable your team and to create the right environment for them. And this involves management tasks and methodology tasks. Management tasks, kind of the standard project management stuff you have to do, right? Often in these processes, they are rather, let's say, tightly scheduled. So a lot of what you do is actually push your team forward, make sure that they adhere to the schedule, manage the timing, make sure that they achieve what they have to achieve within the given time frame. So you also have to, again, kind of push them a little bit from time to time. As a coach, you are responsible for managing the team dynamics within your team. So, you know, help them to form a team, help them with conflict management and conflict resolution, and generally make sure that they are motivated and energized throughout the process. And then also, again, helping them to actually set and achieve goals. This is kind of the management part of you as a coach. Then the interesting part is obviously also that in this training, we provide you with the fundamental understanding of the process. So how does human-centered innovation work? How does design thinking work? So you also understand the innovation process good enough to guide the teams through it. You have the role of a challenger. You are there to ask the right questions at the right time, challenge the team's approach and assumptions if they for example, feel like they have a very good solution, but they haven't tested it with people outside of their group, that would probably be your task then as a coach to tell them, guys, what you have right now is only based on your own assumptions. So, go out, test and validate. And what is often very crucial and actually hard to do in a team, especially when you bring different people with different backgrounds together, is decision making. So you're also there to support teams in actually making the right decision in a way that they can still work together with each other afterwards, so that they basically still like each other enough to move forward, even though they might have different opinions on how to move forward. This is kind of what a coach is from our perspective. And then there are basically two things that are specifically not part of your job as a coach, how we interpret it. And this is, on one hand, content knowledge. So as I said before, we don't expect you to be the experts on sustainable cities when we have this topic. For the content part, we actually interact a lot with experts that are then specifically the content experts. You are really there to manage the team and manage the process. So you don't have to answer questions about, how much CO2 a car produces or whatever, if that's relevant. The team has to figure it out themselves. You just provide them, with the energy, motivation, and maybe the process to get there. And then again, even more clear, you don't really contribute to the teamwork. And this is one of the most crucial points we will actually also address in the training. As a coach, you are specifically not part of the team. And it's actually not that easy to kind of keep this, I would call it, professional distance, right? Because I've seen that a lot with coaches that are not properly trained or don't have a lot of experience, that you basically get in a situation where you suddenly are part of the team. So you also make suggestions in terms of content. You also basically partake in the decision making. And this is not what we would like to see, right? Because that basically brings you in a situation where you don't have this different level compared to the team. So this is one of the most important things. You need to be able to keep a certain amount of distance to the team, because again, you are leading them, you're managing them, you're not a part of the team itself. Questions about the role of a coach?
Is it one coach per team? And how many people are in the team?
Is a very good question. There is no kind of clear, straightforward answer. In the best case, it's one coach per team. And in the best case, a team is between 4 and 6 people per team. However, for example, at ETH Week, we have teams with up to 10, 11 people, so might be more. And we also in the past had situations where you as a coach have to manage 2 teams at the same time. So again, flexibility is kind of a core skill, core requirement we need from you to be part of our activities, right?
Just so you get a feeling, I think the most people I've seen someone coach in one go is 6 teams of 5 people, so 30 people. And the idea is that you need to be able to keep your head in a way that you can spread out your attention into X amount of topics and like jump in and out with the team and like follow up. That's hard and it requires kind of a lot of practice. So that's kind of the master level.
Yeah, that's not how we're going to start.
Not how we're going to start. But again, just think about it as you should be able to handle 1 to 2 teams. Think about 5, 10 people.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got a question. First of all, sorry for my camera. There's something wrong with my Zoom application.
No worries.
So you said that the coaches do not really interfere with the decision making, but rather facilitate the way to make those decisions.
Yes.
But I mean, yes, it is hard for master's students to kind of like to keep away from decision making. But how do you yourself define those boundaries? I mean, it's also hard to, define the boundary where you can say that an individual interferes the decision making or not, because the team is going to ask a lot of questions, and
yes,
how do you actually choose which one to answer, which one not?
It's a lot of work. Look, from an academic standpoint, think about it as something called participant observation, which means you're participating there to observe, at the same time doing so, trying to bias your environment the least amount possible. So you cannot be a fly in the wall, which means you're just like listening and taking notes, because you actually have to interfere. Yeah. But what we want you to interfere with is the process, not the content, not the topic. Yeah. So as I didn't see who spoke before, but you need to be able to support them to get to a decision. That does not mean telling them what the decision should be. And that emotional, psychological, let's say, boundary is something that you need to develop. And it's harder for some people than other, but yeah. It is essential that you keep yourself at a certain arm's length, because you need to be able to keep that kind of, you're there to support the team, not their development of the project. You cannot become part of the team. That's the number one rule.
Well, I think it's quite an interesting case, because I have I have tutored many people before, but individuals, and then in many cases, depending on the individual, your approach to this kind of problem, where to interfere and where not, people can get offended and people can react to it in a different way. So I think it's quite an exciting and quite a complicated issue there. So I think it is quite interesting in that sense.
And again, this is a topic you can talk about for a whole day if you want, right? And it's obviously going to be part of the training as well. And where I actually agree with you is that, I mean, there are certain things that are objectively right and wrong, but then also, at least that's my perspective, I don't know what you think, Ellen, in the end, it's also about finding your own style a little bit, right? And people tend to handle these coaching situations differently, and some manage to be actually a bit closer to the team and still maintain enough distance, and others have to be, let's say, even a bit colder and farther away, so that they don't get sucked into the team. So it also is, and this is why we're doing this training, right? This is also an opportunity for you to kind of figure out what is your style, how you are handling these situations.
I think it's everybody has a different style, and that's, you can't copy, you need to develop it. As well, within the context of ETH, every single activity that we put you into, we will make sure that that context is one where the participants of the team know very well that you're not supposed to do that. They will not be expecting, they won't get offended because you don't help them. They might still ask, by the way, we'll always ask, because again, students will always be like, oh, okay, and you're not supposed to. But let's say in the private sphere, we are very many times with clients where they ask us like, oh, what do you think? And I'm like, I'm not here to tell you. And they're like, oh, but so that is an awkward conversation to have. But in your case, kind of, we are already preparing that for you, which should also be part of a kind of a training to help you deal with more complex situations in the future.
Actually, a good point. Yeah, we were very transparent upfront about what is to be expected of the coaches. And again, nevertheless, it always happens that they want more from you, and then you have to be able to say no, as Ellen just explained. Exactly. Any other questions? Yeah.
I think this is, sorry, just for a note, but I think this is very close to what a psychologist would do with their patients. They wouldn't give them the solution, because that means that the patient will become dependent on the professional, but they would just kind of guide them through with some questions or something like that. So I guess it's the same approach.
Exactly. Thank you, Christina. That's exactly the point. And I can tell you personally, I worked with teams where they had an amazing idea. Personally, I thought these guys are going to, get a Nobel Prize out of this. And then they decided to change it for some crap ass shit that you're like, no, why? Of course, you just have to go like, okay, are you sure? You discussed, everybody agrees. And then they're like, oh, yeah, super excited. You're like, okay, well, because it's not your job. And sometimes that's hard, but exactly as you mentioned, it's like a psychologist. Of course, we're not training you to be psychologists, but just think about it from that concept.
Yeah, it's actually very good. The coin I've noticed in the Prisma Capstone course is also that if the coach gets too close to the team, they get a bit afraid of giving constructive criticism. So it's a bit tricky to also not fall on the other side, that you're like they're too shy to like give an opinion that is needed.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a fine line, I guess.
Also a good point. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions or comments? It's already very interesting, actually. Good. Then let's continue. And this actually goes basically hand in hand what we already just discussed. Here we just put together, and again, this is rather brief, rather superficial, but just kind of from our perspective, what are we looking for? So what are attributes that actually help you in being a good coach, and what are attributes that are probably more kind of a barrier to achieve a good coaching, right? So what we are looking for, what helps is to be open-minded. That's kind of a given. So you have to go with whatever your team comes up with, and you also often have to adapt the process as well based on what is happening at the moment. So it's very hard if you have a very clear picture of how things should happen and you can't deviate from that. That is going to be not super helpful. Then obviously have to be empathic, because you have to basically feel how your team is doing. You have to feel if there's tension, you have to feel if they're out of energy, and then you have to intervene. What we just discussed, this neutrality is central. You're neutral. You don't have an opinion. You're not making the decisions. You basically lead the team. So leadership is also a part of it. What helps, based on our experience, if you are enthusiastic and inspiring, because again, this process for the participants can be frustrating at times. So you will actually face these situations where the team is not super happy with what they have or with what is going on. And there it helps if you can kind of reignite their passion a little bit and inspire them to move forward. Flexibility is key. Maybe from kind of a, let's say, logistics perspective, when we do our activities, Ellen and I very, very carefully plan these activities. So you are always going to have an agenda where we basically, you know, step by step map out what is the process, what are you supposed to do. So it's very good to have a clear plan. However, in reality, we often have to deviate from that. So even though we are very well prepared, usually you need the flexibility to make decisions and move away from the plan if it doesn't fit the current process or the current needs of your team. And again, sometimes you also have to do that independently, because if you imagine, you know, ETH week where we have 20 teams with 20 coaches, Ellen and myself, for example, or the people that are basically on a higher level, they can't babysit you all the time. So a lot of the time you have to basically manage your team yourself, and you also have to make decisions yourself. Then this goes hand in hand with flexibility. You have to be able to improvise and adapt on the spot. And when you do that, make it look as if this was the plan all along. So this is also a lot about kind of pretending that you know where you're going and you know what is going on. So it has to do a little bit with confidence, right? So even though you might have to change your plan short term and you don't really know what's happening, you have to be confident enough towards the team to tell them, this is what we're doing and I know exactly how to help you.
Guys, I just want to make sure that everybody understood that.
Yeah.
Improvisation and confidence. That does not mean non-planning and arrogance.
Yeah.
Okay, but you really need to. And again, as a scientist, as an engineer, sometimes like wait, I need to have everything kind of perfectly mapped out. Plans go out the window all the time, and you need to be comfortable with that ambiguity. So we call it dancing with ambiguity. At the end of the day, you need to be able to manage that dance. If you're too stiff for it, that's really not. And again, it's not for everybody. But it's if you can manage that improvisation, you'll be fantastic at this. And again, and there's tools for that. Again, it's not that you're just going out there and improvising out of nowhere. We're giving you the tools to be able to deal with that ambiguity and manage that improvisation. But you need to be kind of that spirit, so to say.
Exactly. That's key. And again, we basically discussed all the points already. So what Alan just mentioned, this dealing with uncertainty and ambiguity, this is essential, right? Because also if we look back to our class, for example, right, we basically changed the format 3 times, from in-person to a hybrid format to a fully remote format. So if you're a coach in this class, for example, I basically sometimes had to change the program half an hour before we started the lecture, right? And you just have to be basically able to deal with that. You know, plans change, we have to adapt, we have to improvise on the spot. And again, that goes basically into the attributes that hinder. If you're kind of narrow-minded and you always have this kind of right solution in mind, it's going to be hard to be successful, right? Because often we ourselves also don't know what is the objectively right solution at the moment. So it's, as I said before, a lot about being open-minded and experiment, try out different things and learn from it, right? What is an important point is the first point on the right side. What we have seen in the past is that, and again, this comes from how we are educated at ETH in all the other classes, basically. We can't, and Ellen just said that, we're always very well prepared. However, we can't always provide you with like crystal clear instructions. So sometimes it's a bit murky. Sometimes, again, we have to change short term. So we can't promise that every time you already know 1 week ahead what exactly is going to happen and how it is going to happen, right? Ellen, you wanted to say something, or?
No, I think you said it. It's not to scare you guys, but it is kind of. Sarah Sprigman once asked me and Stefano kind of what did we see as our biggest contribution to ETH week, and Stefano, who's a professor at ETH, said the art of improvisation, because 99% of the time things go as planned, but it's how you act on that 1%, how you kind of go for it in that moment. And that's key. And again, that comes with kind of with experience, with practice, and with that confidence. The final thing I want to say here, the reason why we're telling you all this is because if you want to have everything, if you want to have the same level of information as everybody else, that requires a lot of, it's a coordination, a lot of planning, a lot of structure, a lot of meetings. And the main reason why we want to scale the coaching aspect of things is because we want it to scale. So if I have to sit with each and every one of you for every single thing we're going to do, then this is not scalable. I just might as well do it myself. So again, and I think that's the important thing is, as a coach, you need to be able to just kind of, you know, here's your gun, go in that direction. The enemy is over there. You know what to do. If what you require is an entire overview of the plan and the strategy of the Kaiser telling you, okay, this is how we're going to, then this is, you know, you're no use. So, and again, it's a funny caricature, but at the end of the day, how do we manage to have a program for 2, 5, 6, 1,000 students in 1 week? It's because you guys help us fill in all those gaps. But again, we need to be able to feel that confidence of like, hey, here you go, Claudia. Here's your planning, also known as here's your gun. That's your enemy over there. Go get him. And that's an attitude thing, actually. And we've done it. We've done it many times. But we need to grow that pool of people. And that's what kind of why we're here. I hope that makes sense. Any questions on that, guys? So again, this is a very, very weird ask from an ETH initiative, but we totally get it. And this is a very, very, very strange presentation from an ETH initiative.
Hi, guys. Hi, Michael and Alan.
Hey.
Yeah, you know, I took part in the ETH week, the hatchery, and a month, 2 months ago in a hackathon, all stuff by Spark teams. And I remember like the experience of my coaches as well and how they had their style, and someone that was like a bit needed the clear instruction and was a bit like, I don't know really what you have to do, guys. But so like I have some experience. The only thing that I don't see it here, so I think it's a good thing. Like in the requirements or like stuff that you want us to do. And is that I am a bachelor student. I'm super motivated. I really like the framework and the innovation thing, and like I want to improve my communication and time management and all these other kind of skills that I really find super. And I'm really like bored of the normal ATH lectures. When I first had like my first experience with Spark Labs and stuff was the ATH week, obviously last year. I thought it was like the best week at ATH I ever had. And so, yeah, I'm really happy to go on with this thing. So is it a problem for me that I'm a bachelor student, or I still get trained and become a coach and so?
So officially, yes. Unofficially, no. It's fine. Don't worry.
Yeah, okay. Nice.
Right, we can improvise.
Okay. Thank you. Super.
Any other questions or thoughts, guys?
Yay.
Good. Then let's basically move.
So what does this all mean? Yeah, exactly. From a
Exactly.
practical standpoint, what are we looking for?
Yeah, now we have talked a lot about, what Prisma is and what we are and what we do and so on, but I now want to get a bit more concrete. And the cool thing is actually when we held this presentation last time, about 2 months ago, this was merely a concept, I would say. And now we know that this is going to happen next semester. So it's a bit more concrete, which is great for us as well. How do we want to approach this, and how do we want to actually, or what do we want to do next semester, right? Now we have talked a lot about what we need, but this is basically what we offer now. So what we have in mind is this coaches training, and maybe let's just directly connect that to how this is going to end. So we want to train you as coaches, and then one thing that is going to happen is this Prisma Capstone course I mentioned, which we are doing in a kind of semester-long format right now. This is going to happen in June as a 1-week block course. So technically, if you want, you can see that as a journey. We want to train you, February, March, April, May, so that in June you're basically ready to coach an actual team in this block course. That would kind of be the overall timeline. And how do we want to do that? We think 6 days of training is appropriate, so that this is actually quite a lot. So we really want to give you a very good understanding of what it takes to be a coach, both from a kind of, theoretical coaching perspective and a theoretical methodological perspective, but also in an applied way as well, so that you already have certain experience how to deal with knowing teams and how to energize and motivate the people you're working with, right? So ideally, and we don't have the concrete dates yet. This is something we'll set up shortly and we'll communicate to all the interested people. But in general, we will have these 3 blocks of training, 2 days each, which again gives you 6 days of training next semester. And at its core, it's a combination of the main theoretical aspects of coaching and the methodology of human-centered innovation, as well as practical training and reflection, both on a group and individual level, to really prepare you to take over a team yourself and guide them through a process. So first block is an introduction into design thinking as the methodology, so that, again, you're basically responsible for leading a team through the process. So it probably is helpful if you have a good understanding of that process. So we will provide you with all the necessary theory, but also practical application of a human-centered innovation process, and really try to build your methodological capability up to a level where you can, as Ellen mentioned before, in a rather independent fashion, lead a team through a process like that. Then the second block is dedicated to coaching in itself. So we actually will have a deep dive into coaching, which means we talk about the theoretical foundations. There's obviously, as with everything, a lot of theory behind that. How do you coach? What is your role? Different ways of team formation, team building, and so on. There's a lot you can study there. We will provide you with the main theoretical frameworks. but we also want to once again have kind of the practical part as well. So we will have this, you know, kind of dry runs of you coaching a group where we do a little bit of role play, put you into various stressful and annoying situations to basically already prepare you beforehand for what usually happens if you take over a team. And then also based on that, and there's actually one point I didn't mention on the last slide, it really helps if you are open to feedback if you want to become a coach. So it's actually really us as a group together helping each other out in developing our strengths and addressing our weaknesses. So we also do a little bit of reflection on how do you see yourself as a coach? Where do you see areas of improvement, and where are you great in coaching, basically? And then the interesting part is day 5 and 6, which again, probably we have to kind of redesign that a little bit, but this would really be kind of the practical application of everything you have learned in the first 2 blocks, where you really, be that for a day or then maybe for this week in June, we have to figure that out, actually take over a team, facilitate the team through a design thinking process, lead the team, and then afterwards, which is actually a very important point, based on this actual real world experience, do a careful debriefing to basically figure out and reflect again what worked well, what didn't work well, and how could we improve that for next time. That's our broad understanding of how we would like to handle that.
So in practice, it's 3 weekends during the next semester, by the way.
Yeah.
It's a Saturday, Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday.
That's probably good to mention as well, yeah, which is the only way we can do that, basically, right? Otherwise, we probably interfere too much with everything else you have going on. Just that you know that already, we also try to provide, a nice and fun environment usually, so that even though you have to, and us as well, actually, we also have to spend the weekend, right? It's usually a lot of fun and we learn a lot from each other. So again, I think for everybody, this is a great opportunity actually also to become part of kind of a bigger community of people that are moving around in this area. It's kind of a cool part of it as well, right?
Also practical. We will give you breakfast and lunch. So let's say Saturday, Sunday. So we'll feed you. It'll be exhausting. You'll be destroyed by Saturday and Sunday evening. But it should be kind of fun. And again, the overall idea is that by June, then you guys will help us run a block course, which is basically kind of at least maybe 6-7 day probably block course for bachelor students, where you guys will basically be the ones helping us scale this up.
Yes, exactly. So that's the journey we have in mind. Any questions about this? Comments? Everything clear? Everyone?
Do you already know?
Sorry?
So I would just quickly ask one question. So the actual work and job will be in June for 1 week.
That's one of them. There's also going to be ETH week in August, and there's a bunch of other stuff coming up. The one thing we have very, very clear is that we have the workshop, the course in June. That one. Okay. ETH will also happen. Again, we have to think of the whole COVID situation as well, by the way. We're going to do this ×3. So we're aiming at getting kind of 8 people per group, so that we have less than 10 people. And then we're kind of, because we can't put you all in one room anymore. Yeah. So we need to split this up in different ways to make it COVID friendly. And again, we're hopefully aiming and knocking on wood that by summer, then we can do kind of the capstone course in one block, as well as ETH week. Again, we're also involved in ETH week, so then we can also kind of run ETH week during the summer. There's a lot of different initiatives happening, but the actual job that I can tell you of right now, 100%. No, forget about 100%. Nothing is 100% anymore.
Exactly.
80% sure.
Dealing with exactly
is in June.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Because just going back to what I said in the beginning, what we're doing here is basically creating this pool of people that can be used for, or that can be part of many different things, right? I just think this block course in June is most likely directly going to be connected to the training. So we're basically building towards that. But again, as soon as you're done with your training, there are a lot of different opportunities where you actually can apply your skills afterwards.
Okay, great, thank you.
No worries. Any other questions?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about like the course for the bachelor's in June. I didn't see it in the FAFA set.
It's not there yet.
Yeah, this is why
it's an
I
undercover
wanted
course.
Okay.
No, we actually just got the approval for that today.
Okay, nice.
So
Okay.
by next week it'll pop up as a
Yeah, I started like typing innovation or Capstone or Prisma for myself, like to do it as a student, but I didn't find anything.
Next week it'll pop up.
Okay.
Anything else?
Hi, I have a question. Hi everyone. Hi Alan. So I was on the design thinking class last year, and I have a question. So is there any opportunity for like the next semester for people who have already been through, kind of design thinking and this kind of approach? Is there an opportunity for a TA job from spring?
This semester there's going to be the only thing we're going to do this semester is this training. Actually, we're not going to do any courses or anything because of the whole COVID situation. So we've basically decided to focus this semester on the coaching aspect of things, to put together this pool, and then in summer, kind of, because again, honestly, it's just not. I mean, you've been through it a couple of times, Liana. Online versus it just doesn't. And then the scalability is also different, etc. So this semester there's not going to be anything specific.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, like instead of the semester course, it's kind of pushed to be a weekly course so that we can make it in summer when COVID situation is better.
A bit condensed, yeah. Exactly. Anything else? Good, then let's basically move to my last slide, which is the call to action. What now, basically? Again, the good news, which is different compared to last time, is that, as Ellen said, this was basically approved today. So this is going to happen. And now we need the people. And how are we doing that? I said before, we already had a webinar like that about 1.5, 2 months ago. And what we did is basically put together a list of people that would be interested in taking part in this coaching training, right? So we already have, I think, about 30 people on that list from the first iteration of the webinar. What you have to do is very, very simple for now. You just have to send me an email. You see my email address there. It's just michael@sparklabs.ch. You don't have to write me or send me your CV or write the motivation letter yet or anything. We really just for now put together a list of all the people that would be interested so that we have your contact information. And as soon as we have news, and it actually probably is going to be soon, right? Because now we can start the concrete planning, you know, setting up dates and timeline and so on. We'll all inform you how the application process is going to work like. So if you want to be on the list to get the info when we basically open up to start the applications, just send me a brief email with your name. Basically, if you want, you can add your department. I mostly just need your name and email address and state your interest in being kept in the loop. And then I put you on our list. And as soon as we have more concrete things to share, we will send this to all of you and inform you how we proceed from here.
So next week we shall define the dates, by the way,
yes.
Of when the dates of those weekends are going to be. So that should be defined by next week. So we have a very clear, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, guys?
Yeah. Good. Again, michael@sparklabs.ch, and I put all your information together and we approach you as soon as we have anything else to share. That was it from our side. Are there any more questions, comments, complaints from your side? Anything we can help you with?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
My question would be, like, is there an option to be informed about what's happening with this in the future? because like I'm not far enough in the study so far, but I would be interested in the future if it still exists then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Denise will is keeping track of all our kind of the people who are interested in, and we're doing events. Yeah, exactly. So we're doing 3 different events, right? Denise, you want to tell them about the things we're doing this semester?
Yeah, sure. Actually, yeah, there's now also a new part, like the course on the sprinkles, which are the events that we will try to make in spring, now that we've condensed the Prisma course. So yeah, they're gonna, like 2 of them are going to be online. We will have input talks from the industry and academic people at ETH, also director, talking about like the importance of multidisciplinarity and working together and self-reflection. And then we also want to have a round of students coming forward to talk about their experiences with it. And hopefully in May, we will get to do like a focus trail in Zurich. There maybe we can also get some help from coaches for the teams. We also want to make interdisciplinary teamwork challenge in the city.
So yeah, just how would it work for me to be informed about what's happening with the Prisma and this stuff in the future?
I will just mail you.
Okay.
I have your email.
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good. Any other questions? Anything else we can help you with?
Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting, and it's a good introduction to the whole initiative. I hate to ask this, but I think it's important to make sure it's clear. Is it a volunteer-based initiative or it's paid one?
It's a totally fair question. Absolutely, Ellen.
Yeah, the training is voluntary, and all the stuff that we do with coaches is actually paid.
Yes.
So, for example, for the week, you will be paid for X amount of hours you spend during the day and the preparation, etc. So I think you'll be paid as a kind of a teaching assistant, but in a condensed format. Same thing for ETH week. There's a salary for the tutors, etc. So all these things are paid actually. Again, the training is just a training. So that's actually being sponsored by Prisma to kind of organize everything and put it together. But yeah, the actual work itself, it will be paid.
Yes.
And it's usually the rates change, by the way, because, for example, I don't even know how much tutors at ETH week get paid. Were you a tutor, Oriana? Anybody was a tutor at ETH week?
Yeah, I was at some point, but
I don't remember how much. But again, there's different. They usually have a different rates for things, so I can't tell you, but it is paid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, indeed. And a follow-up to that, what will happen if we attend teaching, like the training during the semester, but then in June, because everything is so uncertain and we get, I don't know, an internship or something else happen and we cannot make it to the school?
Yeah. You got a training. That's good. You can put it on your CV. Stuff happens, guys. Again, it's not just because you do this does not mean that you have to absolutely do the block course for Prisma. Again, it's all voluntary. We want to have a pool, and that's why we want to have a pool, because we're conscious that things happen, and if NASA calls you to go work with them, well, I think that would be a better job probably than coaching for a week.
Yeah.
So that's okay. It's perfectly fine.
Exactly, because again, the main part of what we want to achieve is having this pool of kind of properly trained, motivated people. But what you do with that from then on, I mean, you can also just be part of the pool and do the training and never partake in any activity. And we're not going to force people anything, right? But this is more kind of an opportunity for you, that through this pool you get access to a lot of different opportunities where you can apply these kinds of skills we teach you in the training, right?
I see. That's clearer now. Thank you very much.
No worries.
go, but yeah, have a good evening, and I'll hope to see you soon.
Yeah, drop us
Thank
an
you.
email.
Of course.
Um,
Bye bye.
Anybody else have any questions? That's all from our side.
I
hope
have
this was
one question. So I wanted to ask, how much is this training like going out of the scope of the design thinking course that we had, and like, does it make sense to attend it after the design thinking class, or could we, for example, participate as like in June as tutors if we don't go through this course, but we have design thinking? We had design thinking class before.
So it's one third of this training is the design thinking stuff.
Yes.
And again, this is really focused on coaching. It's design thinking is just kind of the thread along the line. Obviously, you have kind of some already pre-knowledge, which is super good and useful. And some of these things will be repetitive, of course, because you've done it already quite a lot. But again, the focus is on the coaching, not on the design thinking part.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for the people interested in Prisma, that's also the case for Prisma itself. Like design thinking and sustainability, sustainable development goals are part of Prisma, but they're more like the methodology. The goal is to bring the other competencies that we mentioned.
Exactly. I just put this here again, so that in case you haven't noted my email address yet, you can still do that. Anything else? Recommendations, complaints? Good. If not, I think that was it from our side. As Dennis already said, we are always here if you have any questions anyway as well. Just write an email to me if you want to know more specifically about, Spark Labs and the courses and the coaching. And Dennis is always available if you need to know anything about Prisma specifically. So just write us an email, give us a call if you need anything. Other than that, thank you very much for your attention. It was great to see you, and we hope to get a couple of emails and even better see most of the faces here again at some point in February, March for the training. Thanks a lot for the attention and have a nice evening. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Denise.
Thank you.
Thanks for
It was great.
dropping in.